Good evening, and welcome to The Caring View, the online health and social care platform free to access for absolutely everybody. You will notice tonight, again, I am on my own while Mark is sunning it up in the sunny US of A. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you are watching us on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook or LinkedIn, make sure you give us a follow or a subscribe. And I have some new messages to bring to you before we go to our website tonight. We've got some fabulous sponsors now who help keep The Caring View free for access to absolutely everyone. That includes our CQC hub. It includes all of our free resources, a new one that comes out every single Friday for you. Last week's was a fire safety audit, which we've designed in a way that automatically populates your answers for you and tells you whether you need to create actions. Beautiful little tool for you to go and use. All of that's completely free to access. So huge shout out to our sponsors, Prosperwell, the UK's leading digital marketing agency. If you know Toby, Smooth Toby, Tea with Toby, this is Toby's jam, Prosperwell. So please do make sure you go and check them out. And our latest sponsor as well, which is Care Business Associate Training, another long-time friend of The Caring View, and another part of the Health and Social Care Club, if anyone remembers that. So CBAT are a training provider. They provide all the training courses that you could possibly need. So please do go check them out as well. All of their information is available on our website as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, the information is in the description to these videos as well. With that, go to www.thecaringview.co.uk. You'll get access to all of our resources on there, latest episodes, podcast shows, free resources, our supplier lists, and including our sponsors as well. I'm joined tonight by Rhys Davis and David Ashley. I couldn't be more excited to have Rhys on the show tonight. Rhys and I have worked in the past together on focus groups, and it's been very exciting to work with you in the past. So it's going to be great to discuss our topic tonight. But if you are watching, don't forget to get in touch. Pose your questions to us as we go through tonight's episode. I'm doing all of this on my own as well, so all the background tech stuff, Mark's not here giving me a hand. So if I look vacant, I'm not. I'm just panicking in my head to get everything done. Tonight, we're discussing micro providers. I'm not going to delve into that anymore at this moment in time. First, I want to come to our fabulous guests for you to introduce yourselves for us. So, Rhys, who are you and where are you from?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, good to be here this evening. Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Rhys Davis. I am my title now is I'm a service manager as part of the commissioning team at Somerset Council, and I suppose for the last, it's coming up 10 years now. I suppose my role has been supporting the development of small independent care enterprises that we call micro providers. So yeah, keen to share and talk to you about that today.
Brilliant, thank you, and welcome to the show, Rhys. It's your first time on. You're a Caring View virgin. I'm more excited to pop some Caring View cherries. It's brilliant news. David, welcome to the show. Do you want to tell us who you are and where you're from? Very Cilla Black, that, isn't it? Who are you and where are you from?
Yeah, hi Adam. Hi everyone. So yeah, I'm David Ashley. I've got multiple hats, but I'm somebody who works professionally. I'm involved in direct payments, so receiving social care funding from a local authority or an ICB. I've invariably done a job involving that for the last sort of 15, 20 years, where working for local authorities, insurance providers, HR advisors, you name it. If it's got anything to do with direct payments and people who might engage a micro provider, I've probably had some involvement with it over the years. So I work quite closely with Rhys. I'm based down here in Somerset as well.
Brilliant. Honestly, welcome to the show, David. Thank you both for joining us. So I think the first question is quite an obvious question, is what the heck are micro providers? What are we talking about when we talk about micro providers? Is this, I don't know, one sort of organization which employs, say, 30 people, or is it one person on their own? Rhys, what do we mean by micro providers?
Okay, so yeah, I think people have different things in their mind when they talk about a micro provider. But for me, a micro provider is an individual, a group, an organization that has under 5 people employed, or could be volunteering. So what a micro provider is a service or support that provides local support to local people on a small scale basis. That's independent of any larger or umbrella organization that I suppose that shares the values that you talk about a lot on this on this podcast around supporting people to live good lives. So it brought social care in the broadest sense. So a knit and natter club could be a micro provider, a retired nurse in the community supporting people. Sorry, my camera's just dropped there. Yeah, it's sort of retired nurse in the community who's set up self-employed could be a micro provider. A small learning disability day service. We talk about micro providers, generally because they provide that local personalized support, and they're hidden. We don't hear about them very often. So we've defined micro providers in that sort of bracket: small, independent, providing local support to local people.
Honestly, I think it's great. It's an unseen world of social care. It's like that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. When you go really, really small and have a look, there's actually a world down there that you didn't realize existed. And I think the same can be said for micro providers. I mean, last time we spoke, Reece, and I'll come to you in a second, David, but last time, in one of our last sort of meetings that we had, there was quite a number of micro providers in your local area. I mean, how prevalent are micro providers in social care?
I suppose I'd say, micro providers have always been there, but I think you've pointed to, Adam, they're hidden. They're in the shadows. They often don't meet criteria to be registered with CQC or meet our council frameworks or commissioning frameworks. So very often they operate under the radar. And I suppose in Somerset, we made the decision 9 years ago, actually, let's bring them out of the shadows and put a framework so that we can recognise them, celebrate them and use them. And we developed a program saying, if you've got an idea and want to provide local support to local people, we will help you to set up or develop your service. And I suppose, long story short, there are now 1,300 micro providers in Somerset. Providing usually in Somerset, the model is self-employed people providing a whole range of stuff that keeps people independent, well at home for longer.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, we talk about the numbers in social care quite often, and we always relate it to, the number of workforce that we need. So we've got 160,000 vacancies. We need another 500,000 people by, 2035 or whatever it is nowadays. But actually, if we think about it, without the micro providers, we'd be in a heck of a worse situation, wouldn't we? David, what got you into this world of micro providers, direct payments, and this area of social care? And what are the unique challenges that you've seen along the way?
Yeah, good question. It's interesting. So my introduction to micro providers comes quite uniquely from a direct payments angle. So I took a summer job just under 20 years ago for a charity, a user-led organisation in South London who supported disabled people to live independently. So that was my introduction to social care. I had absolutely I remember, looking up the social model of disability the night before to understand what I was getting into. It really was just a summer job to do some admin. I have never looked back and have continued to work and understand social care, as I say, from a starting point of a user-led organisation, independent living movement. So in many ways, it's quite warped if you're at the point of social care on a kind of big, large scale. As a provider, I'm right at the other end of that spectrum. I'm kind of individuals, Direct Payment Act 96, independent living movement, about people kind of wrestling control, taking the money for themselves, and for the most part at that time, employing personal assistants. So our role, our contract, the councillors we worked with at that time, was to support those individuals who were willing and able to take that money and manage it and employ their own staff. What we've seen over the last 15 years really is various options opening up. Social care landscapes changed. Care Act 2014, it kind of imbued this obligation local authorities to find alternatives, but to embed choice and control into what they were doing around social care. So that kind of that was already happening in that small way in direct payments. But it's like, how do you mainstream some of those ideas? And for me, I think micro providers are the natural kind of extension or progression of that starting point, because not everybody can employ personal assistants. Not everybody wants to be a direct employer. Some do, and for many, that's the best way of achieving the control they want over their care and support. There's a whole cohort of people who don't necessarily want that or can't manage that. Maybe don't want a sort of more standard, what we might consider a traditional provider. And micro providers, as Reece has already touched on there, they offer you a solution because they are local, they can be flexible, and they can offer different types of services in a more organised way. So I think my introduction to micro providers has been from in that context, very much from the direct payment end of the scale, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. It makes total sense. And you've both said quite a lot now. Now my brain's literally firing loads of questions. So I'm going to try and keep it in line with the conversation and not forget what I want to ask. So, Reece, you mentioned regulatory requirements already, and we'll come on to that in a minute. But David, just talking from what you were saying then, in terms of training and professional development, what sort of opportunities are available for micro providers to, I don't know, either enhance their skills or give that reassurance to the people that they're supporting that they've got the knowledge and skills that they're doing? Because any average Joe could go out there potentially and say, well, I'm a micro provider and I'm going to go deliver that care. So what is it around training that we need to be looking at for micro providers?
That's a question. I think at one point I have to make is it does depend on what part of the country you're in. So I was recently involved in a report by the National Direct Payments Forum looking at this issue actually about the kind of the scale, if you like, of what some might call self-employed PA. I think micro providers is a much better word for it. In Somerset, the police have done and kind of one or two organisations that are out there supporting the development of a market of micro providers. They are engaged in identifying the right kind of training. They are looking at the kind of qualifications or, things like making sure people have an enhanced DBS check and some of those checks that they recognise themselves as self-employed, all of those basic things that a provider would do that a micro provider has to do for themselves as a business. So I think there is an element of support that's required to scaffolding, if you like, around developing a successful micro enterprise structure in a local authority area. What Reece and the commissioning team in Somerset have done very, very well. There are local authorities who haven't done that, haven't engaged fully with that. And in those areas, it's likely that there are people working, not necessarily without training, but kind of independently to the extent that it's very difficult to monitor what they're doing or the structure in which they're working. So I think in terms, Reece will tell you better than I can about, I think, probably what we might consider to be the minimum standards that, expectations around what a local authority certainly would expect before they start confidently commissioning commissioning to micro providers. But I think the key thing is for me is that there is a whole range of kind of views within local authorities, or some of them like Somerset, but fewer of them are fully engaged with their role to even do that. And where they are, like Somerset, it can work very, very well. But actually, lots of local authorities are still unsure, still not entirely confident in how to approach even the development of the marketplace. So I think that's almost the bigger question at the moment, is how do we standardise? A lot of the work I know Reece has been doing in his community of practice is around bringing commissioning in to sort of standardise, share good practice and make it possible. So I think Reece, might be better placed to discuss the granular, what he might think a micro provider should have in terms of training.
No, definitely.
If that's right, Reece, to just hand it over.
Yeah. No, Reece, we'll definitely come on to that. I just think, just one last thing then. So I've experienced micro providers in the past, and they've usually been, say, families of children who are living with disabilities or have got quite complex needs themselves, and they'll recruit and employ, say, 4 or 5 carers to, manage their care needs over a 7-day-a-week period. What support's available to them as micro providers? So not someone that's actually going out and delivering the care themselves, saying, I'm a micro provider and that's what I'm going to do. What about the families who are the employers? What support's out there for them for payroll, for training, for sourcing that stuff?
That is one for me. Yeah. So, okay.
Okay, David.
So what we need to make a distinction then. So if you're using a micro provider and they're genuinely a micro provider in the truest sense, then they're self-employed. So actually, in theory, somebody who is kind of hiring services from a micro provider shouldn't need to run a payroll, shouldn't need to have employers' liability insurance. They're going to get a bit of support in terms of understanding the contractual agreement they're entering into. But in theory, the micro provider should manage lots of that end of things, because they're providing the service. In my world, pre-micro provider, in many areas where we have lots of micro providers, those direct payment recipients who are employing, they absolutely do need support that you just described. So if they're employing personal assistants, i.e. not using self-employed, but actually employing them, then yeah, there are DP support services commissioned local authorities. Sometimes they're in-house, sometimes they're external. And I have to say, it is a bit of a lottery, unfortunately, because the legislative basis for that support is very loose. So local authorities can interpret it as, they can be as light touch as point you in the direction of skills for care for some advice, or they can commission a service that has bells and whistles that will go out and visit people and give them the real support that they need to do precisely the things you mentioned. So, to set up, get insurance, get payroll going, employment, all of that stuff. And when things go wrong, having a contact somebody to support you. And I think part of the issue at the moment, at least for me in the payments space, is how that support structure that has been traditionally built around the employment relationship has to be extended, resourced effectively, so that they can advise people who might use self-employed micro provider for some of the time, who are employed for maybe some of the hours, who might want to mix or one or the other. The support services really need to catch up, if you like, with the developments in the market, I feel, because the self-employed PA micro providers aren't the panacea, employing PAs isn't the panacea, but actually what we really need is a mixed economy, and we need supports available, funded by the local authority, that will facilitate better access to that choice and able to achieve the outcomes that the Care Act says local authorities should be encouraging them to achieve, if that makes sense. Yeah, there is support out there, but it's varied. Sorry.
I mean, if only the regulator was now regulating local authorities as per their contractual requirements alongside the Care Act, eh? Maybe we'll actually start getting direct payments provided and used the way they should have been years ago. Interesting. Let's see what happens this year when the framework starts to get rolled out. Right, Reese, talk to me. Tell me, how do micro providers work with local authorities, health partners, other stakeholders? What are the barriers that they're facing, and how can they work together? We've heard from David already that there's some complexities around the country in how that works, and there's some reservation about it. Tell me more.
Yeah, and I suppose I think that is a question every local authority and ICB are wrestling with. They're saying, we see this capacity, we see this untapped potential for communities to design and deliver their own solutions to the challenges facing social care, but because they're small and because they don't meet our frameworks, we just don't know how to do it. And so there's been talk of, can we create smaller frameworks? There's been lots of discussions, but ultimately, because of the way, all commissioning frameworks rely on CQC registration, especially for care at home. So there are huge blocks and barriers for, in fact, it's a non-starter for micro providers to be directly commissioned by health and care services. So that brings it with it huge challenges, but it also brings a huge opportunity to make actually true personalization happen, and to drive direct payments, and the opportunity is that we can be removed from the bureaucracies sometimes within our contracted and commissioned and regulated services that we all know stifle innovation and stifle creativity sometimes in how we deliver care. And what local authorities are tentatively stepping into, I think, is saying, well, actually, we don't need a procurement highly managed marketplace for this micro providers. We can have because we're talking about people who are able and willing and have capacity to self-direct and self-manage their care and support. That gives us the ability to have a proportionate but still robust approach to developing our marketplace. And so Somerset, we've been at it for 10 years, but there are scores of local authorities that are hot on our heels, saying, who are saying, actually, let's build partnerships and let's create some loose frameworks where we say, what can give us enough confidence in our area to signpost your services to self-funders and to people with direct payments? And what we are seeing here is actually lots and lots of different approaches and different ways of doing it. So some local authorities, essentially developing local trusted trader, checker trade type schemes, where that's essentially what it looks like in Somerset and most other areas. We don't want to do too much because we are not a regulator and it's self-directed support. So if we get into the position of doing too many checks or doing too much oversight, then we enter this quasi-regulation where families say, oh, I don't need to self-direct because the council have done everything. Whereas we're like, no. Legally, they are working under your direction and your control. So they need to work, you need to do the checks. And so we're all we've got a community of practice of local authorities who are looking at this, just grappling with what's too risky, but actually, is there a bigger risk of not doing it? But, what does proportionate but robust look like in terms of our approach to enabling and supporting this and knocking down some of those barriers that you took, to unlocking the capacity of this workforce?
Yeah, and I suppose you run the risk of coming into the sort of liability angle, don't you, as well as saying, oh yeah, these people are absolutely fine, and if something goes wrong, in this case of, well, the council told me I could use them and everything was okay, so it gets, really risky. There almost needs to be like a due diligence guide for people who are, using micro providers, aren't there? These are the basic things you need to do. This is the due diligence you must undertake to make sure you are kept safe, and this is what we're recommending to you. I suppose it doesn't help because social care does get a bad rap a lot of the time. Bad news sells papers, good news doesn't. And we do see in the papers, from time to time, a little less at the minute, actually. They're more focused on, I don't know, whatever's going on anywhere else in the world than the social care sort of narrative in this country. Since COVID disappeared, it's sort of taken the back burner a little bit. But we do get those negative stories of abuse, financial abuse, misappropriation. We get all of that coming through. And if anyone watches Vera, because I love Vera, Brenda Blevin, she's like mother, she's queen. In one of the recent episodes of Vera, there was a gentleman who was looking after a family relative and actually took her money, left her in poor conditions. All of that scares people. It will put them off from using people who are unregulated. So we've had a comment come in to the chat. The first comment was introducing themselves. They work at Care Match. So David, potential LinkedIn connection here for you. Go and check them out. But they've also said that they're in the process of discussing with CQC how their service can be monitored by them, and it's a long old road. So what is the sort of regulatory conversation going on at the moment? Is there never going to be regulation of micro providers? Because if we're out there providing personal care, one could argue, actually, as soon as you put your hands on someone to give them a wash, you're providing a regulated activity, so it should be regulated. We don't want to go down the ways of costing people out of the sector, but to play devil's advocate, shouldn't they be regulated, Reese?
Well, I strongly feel that they shouldn't, and obviously they, and in terms of, because we need to think carefully about who we're talking about. I think I'd agree with you, and hopefully every listener here, where for vulnerable people who require a service where somebody is going to make decisions, coordinate, manage that care and support, absolutely every day of the week they should be regulated, and I would want that for myself and my family. But in terms of, this is where, I'll probably share the answer with David, because David's got strong views on this as well, is that actually for people who are able and willing to self-direct and happy with the risks and responsibilities that go with that, the law is clear that there are exemptions from regulation for people who can choose how, when and where they have their care and support, and can control and can direct that themselves. If I needed care tomorrow, if I chose my next door neighbour to provide that to me because I've known them for years, I don't, just because personal care is involved, they shouldn't have to be regulated. It's my life, it's my risk, and we need to have we need to recognise that it's I always say it's a horses for courses thing, that actually we need regulation for vulnerable people, but actually there are people out there who have got a very good idea of what they want and want to self-direct and actually want to make their choices and live their lives, and I that's my view is that we need to have a framework that accounts for both of those things, which I think we've got, and that is baked into our current sort of legislative arrangement. And by regulating micro providers, we would make so much activity illegal overnight that happens that forms a huge part of our informal care economy of friends, neighbours, and stuff like that delivering care. And I don't know, David, does that, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think, again, predictably, I will come at it from the direct payments and the living end of that kind of arguments are strong, but the position I would take is individuals who choose to direct, who are in a position to, and who employ personal assistants. One of the kind of, the ethos of employing, so if we go right back, not micro providers, employing a personal assistant is there is a concept of personal assistance, or ANCE I'm talking about here. So individuals arguing that they want somebody supporting them who is an extension of themselves, who is, when I was first getting my head around this whole world of social care and independent living, I listened to someone many years ago from an organisation called ILA, Tracy Janaway, just in case she's listening, I think still working in the field. Amazing. And I was totally green about social care. And I remember her talking about, it was somewhere in London, it was an event, and she was talking about the difference between a carer, a social care worker from an agency, let's say, and a personal assistant. I was, and it really said, and she said how, the care worker might go to the fridge, you ask them to make a cheese sandwich, care worker go to the fridge. If the cheese has got some mold on it, they're going to pick up the cheese and say, well, my training, everything that's been, sorry, that's my dog talking about cheese. My training tells me I can't make a sandwich from that cheese. It's moldy. So they cut, they get rid of the cheese, they don't make the sandwich. Whereas a PA says, there's some mold in this cheese, what do I do? And you say to them, what I do is I cut the mold off, and I decide that I still want the cheese sandwich. They would make the sandwich because they're your PA, they're an extension of you, and that's what they do. So it's a crude example, but it stuck with me because I think it's a good one. And it's not to suggest that no care should be regulated. As Reece said, of course it should. There are people who lack, who don't self-direct, we need regulation for certain sectors of people who access social care and healthcare support. But we also need to accept that there's a very strong position that argues, actually, I have capacity. I'm going to make decisions about the care and the way I receive my care and support. And I think micro providers, what's interesting to me about micro providers is I feel they straddle that divide a wee bit. So we do need robust and flexible enough systems that are able to kind of acknowledge that split, that actually can still provide, because as we said, they're not just providing personal care, they're providing all sorts of services, some of which regulating it in the same way as you regulate a social care provider providing personal care just wouldn't make sense. At the same time, having no regulation, it could be problematic because, like I said earlier, if you're employing a assistant, there is an element of you've got to take control, or somebody has, whether it's a loved one or whoever, for that person. There's an element of control and somebody managing that situation. In many cases, the actual person who seek the care and support. So, they've got capacity, they can make those choices, and they can regulating who they use for support is kind of a different question. Many people using micro providers might not be in that situation. So we just need a grown-up conversation and a bit of time and resource to get it right, which is why when Reece says, it's been 9 years in Somerset, they have cracked it, but they've been very successful, and they've had ups and downs, but they've adapted because they're learning these lessons. And it's just about having those conversations and kind of, for me, there's just a mixed market. There's care providers, there's non-care providers, there's micro providers, and there's PAs. And I think they can all exist happily. I think the problem we sometimes have is that resources dwindling, and there's often this desire to kind of erase the bottom almost, just the kind of cheapest option and make it work. And I think if we stop doing that and we collectively say, look, we can have a really thriving mixed market here, then I think we can all kind of win. And actually, for all of us, as the older population grows, we're all going to need this care and support in some or another at some point. So I think we need to embrace the options. So I think, regulation is all micro providers can't be unregulated. We can't over-regulate. We need to have, it's a bit of a cop-out, I guess, but we need to just have a bit of a a balanced view on it, if I'm honest.
No, I love both those answers. And again, I'm just playing devil's advocate because I like to hear the conversation that's around it. And I'm not an expert in micro providers. You could have both turned around and gone, "Oh yeah, totally, we need regulation." I come from a conversation I had with a provider in the USA, and regulation in America is completely different to how it works over here. And in some states, you're not even regulated as home care providers. So anyone can set up as home help and home health in America in certain states to become home care providers. In other states, they can enforce the regulation because obviously each state can make their own laws around certain things and make their own requirements around certain things. So I think we all just get a little bit panicky in this country when we say, "Oh, well, they're unregulated," because we're so used to everything being regulated. Even your electricians, their NIECIC or whatever it is, making sure that they've got the correct sort of qualifications and regulations and certifications, and we're so anal about seeing all of that this is scary to us because it's new and we're at the development phase now. So it's also exciting. We've also had some comments in around some of the most demanding aspects being around HR and payroll. And I feel like I just need to give a quick shout out to Pocket Carer. So Emma Harding, founder of Pocket Carer, I met her a couple of years back. An incredible system for self-employed carers that's out there, helping you manage care plans, helping you manage payroll. And I think it's an absolutely incredible idea born from a micro provider. She was a self-employed carer, thought, I need a way to manage this, develop this app. It's incredible. Please go and look at it. If you are struggling with certain things, we're not the BBC. I'll plug whatever I want. If there's other apps out there that do the same things, get in touch with me. I'll plug you as well. It's just what I know at this moment in time. But there's so much out there now to support individual micro providers. I think it's incredible. Right. We've discussed regulation and the CQC. That's all the airtime they're getting tonight. So we've spoken around innovation and we've spoken around, we've spoken around innovation. Paul, Reece, you mentioned innovation earlier, the innovative ideas that can come from micro providers. And this is a question to both of you. So whoever wants to go first, that's fine. But what are some of the innovative approaches you've seen micro providers come up with within your areas that you're working in, or even from afar? What are some of the most sort of wow? I can't believe you could do that. That was my worst Owen Wilson impression. But what are the sort of things that you can do as micro providers?
I think Reece, you're better positioned to answer this.
Well, I mean, the thing that's recently inspired me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the place that I'd like to grow old. Essentially, is a little village. In fact, there's a number of places that are doing this now. But it started with a little town. It's 4,000 people called Wiveliscombe in Somerset, and in Wivey, a retired social worker came to our program and said, he's a retired social worker, and said, we've got a real problem in our community around dementia. There's lots of people, we're quite isolated, the traditional care agencies can't reach us, and we've got a growing and aging population in Wiveliscombe. And they said, I feel we need to do something. I think care should be provided locally by local people. And so he set up a town meeting and a couple over a whole week actually in the library, and said, can we talk about this as a community? And out of that came the idea to create something called Wivey Cares, so Wiveliscombe Cares. So Wivey Cares, they set up, had the church set up a board of trustees and became a charity. And they said, actually, if you have an idea for a service or support that could help, you come to us. So actually, it's much better than anything that I was doing at the council. Actually, no, this is the way to do it. Don't do what I was doing. So they set up that. They said, who wants to do what? And guess what? Everybody put their hands up. Said, I don't mind doing a bit of volunteering or being a good neighbour. Oh, I've got this idea. I'm a handy person who used to do this. And so in Wiveliscombe now it's 4,000. They've got 40 micro providers. They've got 50, 60 volunteers. They've somebody said, oh, we haven't got a memory group, so they set up a memory group, a dementia memory group. Then they said, actually, during COVID, there's not enough food, so they set up a food hub and a community fridge, and now they've got a growing project. And suddenly, a proliferation of stuff that can keep people well, help people live good lives, connected lives in their communities. And for me, I'm like, well, I'm like a spectator saying, oh my gosh, this is the social care future, is communities having that entrepreneurial spirit to say, no, actually, we can take control here. We can design and define what's needed in art and actually respond to it and deliver it as well. And that has blown me away. And you can, if you Google Wivy Cares, they've got a great website now. There's Wincanton Cares as well. There's Carey Cares. There's Wells Community Support Network. There's Watch It Coastal Community. There are, post-COVID, this is the thing that is, I'll stop there, but it's the thing that excites me beyond anything else, because I see this is the next level from micro providers. And in terms of micro providers, that local governance, local quality assurance, you don't mess about if you're a micro provider in Wiveliscombe, because everybody will be on you, because it's much better than the council performing some of those functions from afar. It wins on every metric essentially. So that's my bit, and I don't know if there's anything from David about what your area, but that's my win. Easy win. Wivy Cares. Yeah.
I think. Go for it. Yeah.
No. I was going to say, what are some of the things you've seen?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, my involvement is probably more on a kind of strategic level, or so for individual cases. It's, I don't have that much day-to-day involvement. Obviously, I mean, my day job, I actually, in full disclosure, I work for Mark Bates Limited. We provide public liability insurance policies for self-employed micro providers. So for a period of time, a few years ago, I was interested to kind of understand this growing market in Somerset, and I gave my details. So I wanted anyone interested to speak to me, because I felt that was the right approach to understand. And there's an area in Wales where they're supporting development microproviders, and many of those people contact me, and I make it my business, which is probably quite unusual, to talk to people when they make contact with us about the policies they want. And I ask them what they're doing, and they talk to me about it. And I often say to them, look, if you ever have an issue, keep my details. You've got a named person insurance company, because I know it's quite a rare thing to have as well. And I think people appreciate it. But consequently, it means over the last few years, what I have had, and this is something that does interest me, and I think is one of the kind of what's so powerful about this kind of stuff that Reese is talking about, certainly with eCares, but actually more generally, is what I'm fascinated by is everybody I talk to has a different background, a different story. But what they have in common is this kind of desire to get engaged with the local community, to do something positive, to bring their skills and to people around them in their community, and to support people. And I think, that to me is very interesting, because that is, as I said earlier, I touched on the growing population. We haven't, I don't want to use the, air crisis language and everything, but we've got to adapt. We need to engage our community. So actually what I've witnessed in those conversations is there is a group of people that are under the radar, that do want to support and help. And I guess my day-to-day involvement, that's the thing that really stands out to me. If I'm talking to somebody outside of this sector, somebody in my family or a friend who doesn't have any knowledge of this whatsoever, that might be something I'd pick out and say, that's, it's been interesting, because whether it's the area in Wales who have got my details, or Somerset, I have very similar conversations with people who are, in very different areas, demographics, whatever, backgrounds, ages, but actually they've all got this thing in common. So I feel, that's what we need to harness here. However we get the regulation right, however we get the balance right between local authority involvement, and allowing communities, maybe, dare I say, kind of care co-ops, I think is another idea where this could have a real impact. It's that spirit of wanting to support one another that I think stands out for me as a facet of micro provision, and how that fits together with, in my world, it's direct payments, it's people actively seeking people to employ. And there's a similar spirit, but this is kind of an inversion of that. And I think that is a very positive kind of, the spirit grace, really, that I think we all have a duty to, whether that's professionally or in our day-to-day lives. Being a micro provider is incredibly rewarding, is the sense I get.
I mean, it's so inspiring to listen to the both of you. And, you know, I've spoken at, well, Rishi, you'll know, I've spoken at many events around the country for councils, for trade shows, for care events, for training providers. And one of the stories I always say to people is, or talk to people about is, you know, what is social care? And the first thing people say is, well, it's care providers, or it's this, or it's all of that sort of stuff. And I always go down the lines of, well, actually, have you ever opened the door for somebody who can't open the door for themselves in the supermarket? Or have you ever reached anything down from the top shelf for somebody who might not be able to get it? You know, little things like that. That is social care. That is what social care isn't owned by the big organizations or me with my 4 nursing homes. That's not social care. Social care is the idea of caring for people in society. And anyone can be a part of social care as soon as we get our heads around that. And most of us have provided some aspect of social care in our lives without even thinking about it. It's just now that we're applying a term micro providers to it and people are getting a little bit antsy that we're a bit like, oh, actually, how do we address this and how do we go through this? I mean, we've had one comment come through, just going back to the regulation bit slightly, and it's on LinkedIn and it's not pulled through to StreamYard, unfortunately. So I'm going to read it out. I can't pull it up on the screen. It's from Paula Cashmore. And it was just, I think this is where, again, talking about the regulation side of things, this is where a recognised care professional register can ease the process for both commissioning and using their services. And I'm inclined to agree that actually a care register may be beneficial for people. It's a one-stop shop where you can put your DBS, your references, potentially your training qualifications, and then having some sort of, I don't know, validation of who you are so they can go and reconcile that this is the stuff that you've got, helps with that due diligence process. I think is a really, really interesting take on things. And I think we'll revisit the care register conversation in a later show this year. We've had another question come through, and it is, how do we get local authorities to engage? And I know we've spoken around the complexities of this already this evening, but how do we do it? If, you know, I'm one of these people, let's not talk about problems. Actually, what are the solutions? So, Reese, I'm going to come to yourself first, being a council member yourself, or council worker yourself. So, how do we engage with our local authorities? Let's think we're not in Somerset. Let's think we're not lucky to have Reese Davis, and we're in an area of the country where you aren't there, and I'm a micro provider. How do I start those conversations with a local authority?
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, in everything, it's a cost benefit analysis, isn't it? You know, do I want to disrupt my our traditional home care market? Oh, this sounds risky. What are the risks? What are the liabilities? I'm regulated. We can't measure it. We can't apply our traditional framework. You can see already oh my gosh, CQC, HMRC, oh my God, you can see the worries, and you can see, well, let's maybe park that for another day. And that, and that's where I think historically it's been. But what I think that a number of local authorities are showing is that, look at the impact, look at the outcomes, look at the risk of not doing this in terms of building. And I suppose I think there is a collective business case to be made within the local authorities who have taken that step. And it's not me, I'm just the worker. It's the leaders in Somerset who have made the original commissioning decision to do this, who've said, well, actually, let's invest in our communities. Let's look at different models for different people. And if you look at it against any metric, so if you were sitting down with commissioners in other areas and say, well, actually, let's look at workforce. Yeah, let's look at workforce capacity. Oh, my goodness me. We don't market or promote it in some sense. We have 100 inquiries a month from people wanting to set up as a micro provider. Yeah, we have the opposite problem that every other provider in the sector has. If you look at, everything's about financial imperatives. Well, the cost of a micro provider is cheaper. It keeps money local. It boosts local economies. It strengthens community connections. It drives up personalization. And I think the bit you talked about at the start, Adam, around CQC assurance is front and center in this discussion, is because look at those, the key themes in the local authority CQC assessment. It's around, timely support. It's around community partnership, community engagement. It's around, people wanting that flexible continuity, personalized support. It's written all through it. So, using that as a route to say, not only is it cheaper for families and self-funders and local authorities, it delivers better outcomes, it delivers against your Care Act requirements, and it builds a workforce that's fit for the future and keeps money local and boosts local economies. I would be saying, the business case is pretty, it's a way up. Obviously, you've got to weigh the risk in, but it's becoming more compelling. Yeah, exactly.
It writes itself. The return on investment realistically is going to be incredible. And I think one of the last times I looked at stats, there was something like 5 million unpaid carers in this country and Wales. So in England and Wales, and that 5% is taken from the age of 5 and up. So when they talk about unpaid carers, they're talking from 5-year-olds and older, and there's 5 million of them in this country. Without them, social care would struggle, and actually without the micro providers on top of that, it really would struggle. So it is a bit of a no-brainer, really, to look into this. And again, comment come through saying 5% turnover in an industry where the norm is 27 to 30%. Again, there's got to be a reason behind that. It would not be a conversation about social care if we did not talk around the T word, which is technology. I know we've brought up Pocket Carer, and I've also given a shout out to Care Match, but I'll come to David first. What sort of role does technology play for micro providers? And I'm thinking in light of the COVID pandemic, where the world has changed and it isn't going to go back to the way it was before. I know we've got some normality coming now, but in the world of micro providers, what sort of role can technology play, or is technology playing?
Yeah, I think that in social care generally, certainly in direct payments, technology plays a really important role. My hope for technology isn't used to replace it; it's used to enhance and support what we have. Because I think whenever it's offered up as a solution to a problem that reduces costs, where I think we have a bit of a problem. I think Pocket Care, I know quite well through my day job. Really interesting kind of platform. So anything that micro providers will manage better with a platform that provides them with that kind of information, a way to manage their structure, their work, a way to get their documents in one place, a way to kind of match anything that enables people to match themselves with the need. There's various organizations out there matching people who need care providers with providers themselves. So I think technology is absolutely kind of incredibly important to the kind of successful growth, of kind of vision. Reece, the work they've done in Somerset has been, Reece could tell you, he's worked really, really hard to do stuff, pre-technology, without the kind of technology we have now, by just manually doing the work and getting people together. I think technology, what it can do is open up a lot of those channels and just connect people in a way that we just simply couldn't. Even WhatsApp in the last 10 years, it wasn't a thing, was it, 10 years ago? It is now. A WhatsApp group can be incredibly supportive to this kind of way of working. So I think, it's absolutely important. And it's not going anywhere. As I say, my only hope for it is that it's used to supplement, not to kind of replace or seen as by kind of taking away investment or resource elsewhere. Because I think that's where we sometimes have a problem. In direct payments at the moment, there's a growth. There's few providers who are offering kind of solutions around managing money, managing how you spend the money, reviewing it, monitoring it for the local authority. Nobody's quite got the balance right, I think, between the independent living individual having control over the money that's allocated to them, balanced alongside its public money and the local authority monitoring it. But I think if you were given the time and space, without the technology is there, it's just a question of, again, bringing those two things together and getting the balance right. But technology's not going away, and it's the capacity to everybody's kind of experience, I think, of accessing micro providers or social care in this kind of form.
Yeah, and even I know you just mentioned WhatsApp, but WhatsApp is the most used social media, I think, in pretty much every country that is in in the Western countries, I'll just say, because I know China and places in the east of the globe have stringent rules around social media usage. But WhatsApp, especially in England and America, is one of the most used social medias now. End-to-end encrypted messages in the palm of your hand. I mean, who would have thought of a day that that would happen? Reese, technology from your perspective, what sort of role is it playing, or do you expect it to play?
Well, I mean, again, starting my real passion, angle, interest in this is around community organizing. How can we, create the conditions where, these usually atomized individuals who have lacked confidence and maybe the permission and the tools to set up can be connected with others to build that, and so all the success in some sense has been around networks, and you talk about WhatsApps, and in terms of that community organizing piece, technology is it wouldn't have been possible without WhatsApp, wouldn't have been possible without Google Forms, Google Sheets, Google Groups, all of the just open source technology that is available to people to get organized around a cause or around a passion or an interest that they have. And I think that's, for me, is the biggest one. I'm big at the moment in like this sort of I don't know, sort of citizen development. I don't know if you heard this, so it's the power app platforms, this, so people, this low code stuff where people can build automations and pages. So we, our brokerage in Somerset is all automated, and by a few techie IT bots, so people can find micro providers quickly. And I think, so what communities and people can do is increased. Obviously, then we have the market as well, that where that citizen level finishes, then we've got the market, and then and government that can come in, and the state who can support and supplement with more things. And yet again, I think there's room for progression and development. And we talked about care match, pocket carer. In fact, there's a number of people in this space, who and that's healthy. And I think as long as the micro providers have control over what works for them, I promote them all. I say, great, if they improve your offer, improve your lot, fantastic, great, go for it.
Definitely. Talking of tech, we've lost David, so I'm hoping he manages to join us again in a minute. I've got about a million more questions that I want to ask, and I'll be completely honest. I went into this show tonight, and I'm always honest to my guests. I went into this show tonight going, micro providers, how do we make this last an hour? How are we going to have this conversation run the length that we need it to run? Because it's not, micro providers. It's not the sort of sexy CQC, how to pass your inspection, but actually this conversation is really, really meaty, and I'm learning quite a bit from it. And, if I was sat here at home thinking, oh, what do I want to do in my life? I'm retired, or I'm taking a bit of a gap here. What do I want to do? I'd be sat there going, oh, do you know what? I'm going to become a micro provider, because this sounds like the most control I can have over my future and what I want to do. So I do have a ton more questions, but we do need to finish at 8:30 because I'm a stickler for going over. So one quick question, and I don't know whether there is an answer to it, but inclusivity, diversity, equality, how does that factor into micro providers? Is there a conversation around that? Is there a way that we can sort of promote that for people so that actually all demographics of society are able to utilize micro providers? Are there any current challenges, or actually are micro providers doing it the right way?
I'll go quickly if that's right, David, and I'll pass on to you. Is that the number of micro providers who have set up the service who have a registered disability themselves, or who had experienced the caring role and who have set it up as a response. Talked about Wivy Cares and Wincanton Cares. Wincanton Cares was set up by a lady who draws on social care herself, but also was the carer for her husband for 10 years, and said, no, it needs to be better. So it's not co-production, it's designed by the people, and so the diversity and variety in our marketplace of people, based on family and personal experience or lived experience to set up and design. We got Gary, if you Google Gary Clark, UK's first disabled strongman, he got in Chard, he set up UK disabled strongman in Somerset, and so he has Magnus Magnusson from Finland come over, and they bring a most amazing event, but run by, designed by, delivered by, people who have it, with experience, and and that's at the heart of it all. So that's my bit. But I suppose that's my experience.
No, I mean, it's incredible, absolutely incredible that we're in a world nowadays that actually doesn't bat an eyelid, is empowering that sort of work to go on. David, inclusivity, what's your take on this in micro-provider land?
I think I was trying to think of the name. Actually, there's a couple of organisations in Bristol, I think, got some seed money, and I think what was interesting about them is what micro-providers can do, and as we've described, they're kind of rooted in the community. So where I know they have like a large Somali community in Bristol, for example, and by utilising and encouraging micro enterprises in those communities, you inevitably have a culturally specific provision automatically growing, seed organically in that area, providing care for people who are culturally specific and aware support. And I think it has, again, like Reece described in Witherspoon, where a community is thriving, where there are different communities, different ethnic mix, if we provide the kind of fertile ground for those communities to build their own provision, then they will automatically, organically represent and reflect the community they're supporting. I think that's, again, it's not coming in and doing unto the people. It's saying, here's the tools, can we support you to do that for yourselves and support each other? So I think it's kind of, if it's done properly, and I'm sure there is a couple of organisations in Bristol had some seed money, but I can't remember their names. That there's evidence that works, that it does, that it kind of organically supports, it has the capacity to support in quite an interesting, culturally specific and relevant way, which I think is great. So I think it's about encouraging communities, supporting communities to meet that need and recognise the need, and that, that's really empowering, and I think it can do.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there's so many bits in this that I think are just PSAs that we need to be putting out for micro providers. In fact, I'm sat here with my remarkable tablet, which, by the way, technology, everyone needs to get one. It's replaced all of my notepads in my life. It's just the most amazing thing in the world. And I've written down two things. One is we have a supplier list on our website. We give everything away to people in social care for free. The supplier list isn't. It helps us fund the social care platform that we've got. But we don't have anything on there for micro providers, and we are a platform for everyone. And so if there are micro provider services out there that are supplying to the areas who want to get onto our supplier list, please do get in touch. We'll include you. But we are also building up a set of hubs on our website, which are completely free to access. And I'm thinking to myself, we need a micro provider hub. We need Q&As, we need guidance, we need links to resources for local authorities and commissioners and HMRC and self-employment and stuff like that. So Reece, David, I'd love to continue this conversation at some point in the near future about what sort of things we should be including on our micro provider hub, not to replace anything what anyone else is doing out there, but actually just to link to them. We get thousands and thousands of visitors to our website each month. I think the most we had in 1 month was 23,000 people on our website. So actually, there's a demand for people to learn about social care. So if we can provide further information about micro providers, let's do it. Let's see what we can get on there, and let's get some information up. Final question to you both tonight, and I'll go around and I'll start with Reece. And I'll keep talking for a little bit afterwards so you can think about your answer, because I'm kind like that. My question is, looking ahead, what trends or developments do you anticipate, do you think are going to shape the future of micro providers in social care in England? And I'll use England specifically because we've already discussed tonight the complexities of just looking at different authorities around the country. So in England, and how can the sector adapt to meet the evolving needs and challenges? So while you're having a think, please do remember, go to www.thecaringview.co.uk. You can find out all of our resources on there. Please do go check out our sponsors. They are absolutely fantastic people. We know them in social care as well. They are vetted. They are strong contenders for the best of the best that are out there. And in the comments tonight, I have put links through to CareMatch, to Pocket Carer, to, forgive me, I'm going to mispronounce this now, Withy Care, is it, Reece? Yeah, so go and check those out as well. All of that really, really interesting stuff. And like I say, we will look at getting a micro provider hub up on the website, because there are a lot of you out there, and we do want to support everybody in social care, not just the regulated providers. Have you had time to think, Reese? What's the future looking like? What's going to be shaping up in micro provider world?
Yeah, I think there's two strands to it really. I think the big change is a societal cultural change where more people are going to be comfortable with gig economies, sort of portfolio working. Self-employment is not going to have the stigma or barriers that it once did. So, and I think it's becoming more and more of a common thing that people. So I think it's going to, regardless of what we're doing or what this is gonna grow. And I suppose to be ready for it, local authorities, I think more and more are going to have to engage with it in some way, shape, or form, and we are seeing that. And I think the other part of it links more into David's world, is that we are seeing more developments around direct payments and direct payment support, enhanced direct payments, supporting more people to have more choice and control over their care. And I think it's a real catalyst for the personalization movement, to really, we've waited a long time for it, but this is going to be a key driver to make choice and control really happen. And I think it's going to happen because this is where the workforce are going. So that's where I think, that would be my nod to the future. Yeah.
No, it's brilliant. I feel like this is like a Miss America contest, and world peace, right at the end. David, I promised you it was going to be an informal show. I swear. David, what do you see for the future of micro providers?
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of what the Care Act. We've got the Care Act. The Care Act's in place, and actually, if you look at it and what it describes, local authorities should be doing. Actually, I think. And they are trying to do that. They're trying to develop a better marketplace, more choice for people. And I think embracing micro providers is one big way they can do that. And I think the future holds probably, like I mentioned, care co-ops there, and kind of more less regulated, but locally based, community-based support has got to be embraced. And I think micro providers, I suspect that history will tell this period of the kind of introduction and growth of micro providers is the beginning of that slightly different landscape we're going to need to have, because I just don't think the provision as it currently is organised across the UK is not sufficient. It's not future proof. So we do need some capacity somewhere. And for me, it's in the community. It's there. It's right next door, as we said. It's about tapping into it and making it work and fit into that. So I suspect it's going to be with eCares, those kind of organisations, culturally kind of different communities supporting themselves, but in a sort of vaguely structured way with local authorities creating an environment in which that can as safely as possible. I hope that's the future, because I think we're all going to need to act support at some point. As you said, social care is a very broad brush.
Yeah, no, totally. I'm loving the love for micro providers tonight. Absolutely loving the love for it. I think anything we can do at the Caring View, please just let us know. If we can get any conversations out there, we will do. If we can help signpost, direct, we will do. This has been the Caring View, the online health and social care chat show and platform, free to everybody. I'm trying to multitask and close out at the same time, and I'm not doing a very, very good job. I'm basically trying to type a message to my guest saying, don't disappear. I can say thank you after the show when we've gone off air. So I don't need to say that now. www.thecaringview.co.uk. Go and check out all of our free resources on our website. There are plenty of them on there. We have our CQC hub. We have our what's going on? We've got our supplier lists, our free resources, podcast, all of that. Go check us out, www.thecaringview.co.uk. I don't know what we're doing next week, but we are definitely live next week. And Mark is back from America. I don't want to promise you all, but I think it's a CQC framework update, which is going to be quite exciting. We've got a lot to talk about there. It's live across the country. And if I remember rightly, next week's episode is taking place on the 27th of February, which is also the date that the new CQC provider portal is live for everybody. So from the 27th next week, everybody can sign up for the new CQC portal. If you've not had your invite yet, like me, don't feel dismayed. We will be going to the ball. We just have to wait till the 27th next week and we can sign up there. But until then, thank you so much, Reese. Thank you so much, David, for joining me tonight. Thank you to everyone in the comments. It's been quite lively tonight, which is exciting. It's great to hear those conversations going off out there. We do want to continue this conversation on. Let's have a look at what we can do in the future. But until then, I will see you next week, where I will be joined back by the fabulous, gorgeous, and Social Care's most followed person on LinkedIn, Mark Tops. Good evening and take care.
Thanks.